Earlier this week, AMD launched a refresh to their current Matisse lineup of 3000 series CPUs. This Matisse refresh brings the familiar XT suffix to some processors, namely the 3600XT, 3800XT and 3900XT. Some of you might find the XT familiar as AMD has brought their branding over from their Radeon GPU lineup, along with improvements that come with what they call optimized process technology. Now, while there are 3 new SKUs this launch, AMD sent over the top tier Ryzen 9 3900XT for some testing. So here's a big shout out to AMD for showing us some love. Thanks guys. The Ryzen 9 3900XT slots right into the top tier category of AMD's consumer offerings. AMD's current flagships in that area are the 3900X and 3950X, while Team Blue features the pretty new i9 10900K, which we reviewed just a couple of weeks ago. We'll be seeing just how the 3900XT stacks up against the competition shortly, but some of you might be wondering, why does this exist? As many of you might already know, everyone's eagerly awaiting the upcoming Zen 3 Ryzen 4000 series CPUs. So what exactly drove this refresh? At first glance, it could just, be a regular refresh. The first generation of Ryzen 3000s were released exactly 1 year ago on July 7th, which makes this release sort of an anniversary update. However, it's more likely that this is AMD's direct response to Intel's 10th gen release just a few months ago, giving AMD the firepower it needed to do battle against Team Blue. Given how AMD really shook things up last time, this is something that's really worth taking a look at. The Ryzen 9 3900XT weighs in at 12 cores, 24 threads, and sports a 3.8 GHz base clock with a 17MB cache. These are very similar specs compared to the 3900X with a 100 MHz increase in boost clock speeds, so we'll be interested to see how that plays out. Because the 3900XT slots in between the 3900X and 3950X, we'll also take a look at how this stacks up against the higher end 3950X, which has 4 more cores and 8 more threads. Over the Team Blue, Intel's 10900K has 10 cores and 20 threads, which puts Intel's flagship at the losing end of the core and thread count battle. However, Intel's proven its worth in single-threaded performance in our previous benchmarks, so don't count them out just yet. Setup-wise, we'll be using this brand new B550 motherboard from Gigabyte, the B550I AORUS Pro AX. It's clearly a mini ITX motherboard and sports a gorgeous brushed metal finish on both the IO armor as well as the M2 heatsink, giving it a really polished look. Flipping it over, we see a familiar AORUS backplate which we're really beginning to dig. It makes the board feel like the solid piece of engineering it truly is. There's an M2 slot here that will support PCIe 3.0 SSDs. Back to the front, we see our familiar AM4 socket that supports the current generation of Ryzen processors and 2 memory slots that support up to 64GB of RAM. Further down, we see a thermal guard on top of an M2 heatsink. Because this is a B550 board, the M2 slot here will support PCIe 4.0 SSDs and the PCIe X16 slot will also run at 4.0 speeds. Onto the I/O, we see 2 HDMI ports, 1 display port, 4 USB ports that run at USB 3.2 Gen 1 speeds followed by a Q-Flash Plus button. Coloured in red, there is a 2.5G Ethernet port and 2 USB 3.2 Gen 2 ports, one of which is in Type-C. Finally, we have 2 golden connectors that will support 802.11 Wi-Fi 6 as well as 3 standard audio jacks. The rest of our test bench will feature a Corsair H100i Pro XT, 16GB of Corsair Vengeance RGB Pro running at 3600MHz, and an MSI RTX 2080 Ti Ventus GPOC. Let's get right to it. Starting with rendering performance, we first took a look at Cinebench R20. In terms of multi-core performance, the 3950X comes in top with a score of 7,735, making it 9% better than both the 3900XT and 3900X, whose scores are less than 1 percentage point apart. The 10900K comes in last with 6,329 points, making it about 11% poorer than the 3900XT. With single core performance, the 3950X still comes in top with a score of 555, making it about 10% better than the 3900XT, 3900X and 10900K, whose scores are all within 1 to 2 percentage points of each other. Next, Corona 1.3 measures multi-core capabilities by seeing how long each processor takes to render a scene in seconds. Hence, the lower the score, the better the processor. The 10900K and 3900X both rendered the scene in 75 seconds, making them the slowest of the bunch. The 3900XT is next, with a render time of 73 seconds, and the 3950X is the fastest, with a render time of 69 seconds. Nice. Next, the Chaos Group V-Ray benchmark first isolates CPU performance before checking out hybrid CPU plus GPU performance. Using only the CPU to render, the 3950X came out top with about 21,000 kilosamples, with the 3900X in second place with about 7% poorer scores. The 3900XT is close behind with 2% poorer performance than the 3900X, and the 10900K comes in last with scores 8% worse than the 3900XT. With the GPU's assistance, the 3950X still came in top, scoring about 10% better than the 3900XT, 3900X, and 10900K, all within 1 percentage point of each other. Blender's BMW scene render is next. This is another render time test measured in seconds, so the lower the better. The 10900K rendered the scene slowest at 122 seconds, followed by the 3900XT and 3900X, both rendering the scene in 117 seconds. With the highest thread count, the 3950X is unsurprisingly the fastest, rendering the scene in 108 seconds. Now, let's take a look at some other synthetic benchmarks for all-rounded performance testing. With Geekbench 5.1.1, multi-core scores show the 3950X coming out top with a 4% lead on the 10900K that comes in second, followed by the 3900XT that's about 3% behind the 10900K, and the 3900X in last place with 2% poorer performance than the 3900XT. With single core performance, the 3950X comes in top, with the 10900K very close behind with less than 1 percentage point difference. The 3900XT is not far off in third, with 3% lower scores than the 10900K, and the 3900X is last, with 4% lower scores than the 3900XT. We considered running WinRAR, but 7-zip tends to be a more platform-neutral program, and puts the cores to the test just as well. On compression, the 10900K ties for the lead with the 3950X with less than 1 percentage point difference in scores. The 3900XT is close behind and scored about 4% lower, and the 3900X is last with 4% lower scores than the 3900XT. On decompression, the 3950X takes the lead with an 8% better scores than the 3900XT, which comes in second. The 3900X makes for a close third with about 1% poorer performance than the 3900XT, and the 10900K comes in last with about 17% poorer performance than the 3900X. Last but not least, we have our gaming benchmarks. We've set our Final Fantasy XV benchmark to run on 1080p at high settings. Here, we see the 10900K coming in first, with scores that are 15% higher than the 3950X. The 3950X itself is 5% faster than the 3900XT, which is itself about 5% faster than the 3900X. Next, we checked out FPS numbers with Eugene Heaven running at Full HD resolution on the Extreme preset. Here, we see the 3950X coming in top with 184 frames per second, followed by the 10900K at 176 frames per second. The 3900X and 3900XT have very similar frame rates of about 169 and 168 frames per second respectively. Finally, we ran 3D Mark times by. The 10900K came out top with a score of about 14,000, making it about 7% better than the 3950X in second place. The 3900XT is not far off with about 5% poorer performance than the 3950X, and the 3900X is less than 1 percentage point away from the 3900XT. Lastly, we did some thermal testing with our 240mm all-in-one Corsair H100i with fan and pump speeds set to max. We ran Prime 95 with small FFTs and measured CPU package temperatures after 30 minutes. The 10900K came in the hottest at about 90 degrees Celsius, with the 3950X coming in next at 84 degrees Celsius. The 3900XT is in second place at 81 degrees Celsius, and the 3900X is the coolest at 80 degrees Celsius. And there you have it. The results are quite clear to me. The 3900XT that's meant to be an improved version of the 3900X does perform slightly better than the 3900X. I mean, this isn't meant to be the next best thing since sliced bread. We don't see the 3900XT performing better than the 3950X, and I don't think anyone is expecting it to. Otherwise, AMD would be in a very difficult position indeed. What we do see is AMD keeping to its promise, bringing about a slightly better version of the 3900X with the refreshed 3900XT, which makes it slightly more competitive against Intel's 10900K when it comes to single-threaded workloads. The good news is the 3900XT is still better at multi-threaded workloads and retails for less than the 10900K. On the note of cost, the XT series processors do cost more than the previous Ryzen lineup, so given the marginal gains, one might just be tempted to go with something from the previous lineup. But the real question is whether or not you're even able to get your hands on a 3000 series non-XT processor at the moment. From what we understand, there are some shortages associated with the older Ryzen processors, so AMD coming in with the new XT CPUs doesn't make for a bad deal at all if you're looking to get a new desktop. They are slightly faster, and to the best of my knowledge, are more readily available, so that'll save you some headache. What I'm really excited to see next is what AMD brings to the table with Zen 3 and Ryzen 4000. We hear that's being launched sometime at the end of the year, but availability is a question that we currently don't have the answers to. In the meantime, if you're looking to get a new processor, the new XT CPUs don't have a poor value proposition, so don't be afraid to pick one up. We hope you enjoyed this video. As always, don't forget to like, subscribe and hit the bell icon for notifications on our latest reviews. Until then, this is Eugene from Dreamcore signing off. Stay safe and peace out.